Welcome back to Butterfly Thoughts with Kelly Savage. I'm Kelly, and as always, I'm so thankful you've chosen to spend a little time with me today. I often say that God gives me these little butterfly thoughts. Sometimes they're completely new ideas that stop me in my tracks. Other times they're truths I've heard before, truths I've even lived by, but somewhere along the way, life gets busy, responsibilities pile up, and they quietly slip into the background. This week, one of those thoughts came fluttering back into my heart. It wasn't complicated. In fact, you've probably heard it before. But God has a way of bringing back exactly what we need to hear, exactly when we need to hear it. The thought was simply this: what if we change to "I have to" into "I get to"? Only 2 words changed. Actually, only 1 word, "I have to," into "I get to." Yet, those words have the potential to change the way we experience an entire day and our lives. As I sat with that thought, I couldn't help but think how often I use the words "I have to." I have to go to work. I have to get out of this house. I have to clean the house. I have to answer all of these emails. I have to make dinner. I have to exercise. I have to run these errands. I have to. Maybe you've said some of those things this week and plenty of other things of the "I have tos." Now, let's be honest. Life is full of responsibilities. God never promised that following Him would remove all of them. It just doesn't happen. But I wonder if sometimes the weight we carry isn't only because of the responsibility itself. Hear me out. Sometimes it's because of the perspective we're attached to. Our words matter, not because they magically change our circumstances, because that's simply not true, but because they often reveal and even shape the condition of our hearts. When I keep repeating, "I have to," everything begins to start feeling heavy. Everything starts feeling like an obligation, another demand, another burden. But what if I paused just for a moment and asked myself, can this become "I get to"? Instead of "I have to go to work, I have to get out of this house and get on the road," I get to go to work. Maybe your job isn't perfect. Maybe mine isn't either. But having work, being able to provide, using the gifts God has given us, those are all blessings. Instead of "I have to exercise," how about "I get to move this body that God has graciously given me"? Maybe your body doesn't move like it once did. Maybe there are aches and pains and limitations. I have my hand raised. But today, it still moves. Instead of saying "I have to clean this house," I get to care for our home. Instead of "I have to go grocery shopping," I get to provide food for my family. Do you see what changed? The responsibility stayed exactly the same. It was only the perspective that changed. And sometimes that's exactly where God begins His work. It made me think about something else. How often does God bring us back to truths we've already learned? I don't know about you, but I notice He does that with me quite often. Years ago, I remember hearing this phrase, "I get to," and I intentionally practiced it. I remember catching myself and replacing those words, "I have to," with "I get to," and it truly made a difference. But then life happened, busyness happened, responsibilities happened. And before I realized it, those old words had quietly found their way back into my everyday conversations. Not because I stopped loving God, not because I wasn't thankful, simply because life has a way of pulling our attention away from the simple truths that once changed us. It comes in silently, but quickly. It's a little deceitful. Maybe you've experienced it too. Maybe today isn't about learning something you've never heard before. Maybe it's simply remembering. Remembering what God has already shown you. Remembering what once brought peace to your heart. Remembering His faithfulness, remembering His goodness, remembering that He is still working. Sometimes we spend so much time looking for the next lesson when God is gently whispering, remember this one. The thought also reminded me of something Paul wrote in Philippians. He encouraged us to think about whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable. If anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about these things. Our minds matter. What we repeatedly think about eventually shapes how we see the world. It shapes how we see ourselves and other people. It even shapes how we see God. Now, choosing gratitude doesn't mean pretending life isn't hard. There are seasons that are incredibly difficult. There are losses and disappointments and heartbreak, illness. In the waiting, there are storms. This isn't about denying any of that. It's about choosing not to let those things become the only thing we see. Sometimes gratitude is simply choosing to notice what God has already placed in front of us. I wonder, have you ever complained about something that you once prayed for? I know I have. So just hear me out. Maybe you've prayed for children. Now you're exhausted raising them. Maybe you prayed for a home. Maybe you prayed for a big home. Now you're tired of cleaning it and all its windows. Maybe you've prayed for a job, a big title. Now you're frustrated going to it. Maybe you've prayed for opportunities, a lot of them. Now your calendar feels too full. Sometimes yesterday's answered prayer quietly becomes today's complaint. Not because we're ungrateful, not because familiarity has a way of hiding blessings. And maybe that's why God brought this butterfly thought back to me. Not because it was new, because I needed it again. Maybe you do too. Maybe this week before you say, I have to, pause. Just pause. And ask yourself, could this honestly become an I get to? Not every situation. Remember, some things are just simply painful. But I think you'll be surprised how many ordinary moments begin looking different through the lens of gratitude. And perhaps that's where your challenge begins this week. Pay attention to your words. Not to criticize yourself, not to feel guilty, simply to become aware. Every time you hear yourself say, I have to, stop for just a second. Ask yourself, can I change this to an I get to? Maybe write those moments down. At the end of the week, look back over them. Did your perspective begin to change? Did your conversations become lighter? Did your heart become more grateful? Sometimes the biggest transformations don't happen because our circumstances change. Sometimes they happen because our perspective does. So before we close today, I'd love to leave you with this thought. God often changes us one thought at a time, one perspective at a time, choice at a time, and maybe, just maybe, 2 little words, I get to, could become one of those choices this week. If this message encouraged you today, I'd love for you to share it with someone who may need this reminder as well, someone who dropped into your heart while listening. And don't forget to download this week's free companion reflection guide at hisservinghands.com to continue spending time with God throughout the week. Until next time, keep looking for those butterfly thoughts, because sometimes the smallest change in perspective can make the most powerful and biggest difference.